In this video, I'm going to be talking about the new album by Collective Soul. It's called Vibrating. The album was released on August 12th, 2022. I actually didn't know this album was coming out this weekend. I just found out about it on Sunday morning, and I wanted to review it, but I already had the Halo Effect album prepared. So I discovered this by watching the music news series that Brendan Snyder posts on every Friday morning. So in those videos, he always lists the new albums that came out on Friday. He does that at the end of his video. But for some reason, I didn't watch this episode until Sunday, and that's how I found out this album came out. And I was like, kind of like, damn it. I mean, like, now I have to change the schedule and give this a couple more listens so I can get this done. So this is a band I used to listen to a lot in the early 90s. I always used to mix up this band with like Soul Asylum and Warrior Soul. I mean, the latter of which just released an album earlier this year. But this band had that big hit called Shine. This was a song I used to like to jam on the guitar back in the day. And I was actually surprised they were still making music. They've been releasing albums since the 90s on a consistent basis. I kind of lost touch with them after like their mid-90s albums. And Collective Soul, they were part of that second wave of grunge that became popular around the time when that big four of grunge were starting to reduce their output. So around the mid-90s, Nirvana was done. Alice in Chains and Soundgarden maybe like released one more album in the 90s, and it was just Pearl Jam that were kind of like still, very active. But then they had this like second wave of grunge bands like Candlebox and Sponge, and both of those bands actually had albums out last year. And then there was Soul Asylum, and there were a few others. So this was a band that was big in the mid 90s. So when I heard about this album, I thought, I really need to listen to this. And on first listen, the first couple seconds, you do hear that like dirty, distorted guitar, and it's like, okay, this band hasn't really changed that much. But as you listen to the entire album, you do notice that they do some stuff that's kind of like their grungy stuff, but then they do some more contemporary stuff, and I'll be talking to them about all of that. So the first song, Cut the Cord, starts with like this fuzzy guitar intro, and then the song kicks in. That's a lot of energy. I think they wanted to start this album with a rocker, kind of reminding us that they haven't gone soft. This one just brings back that classic alternative rock sound, but at the same time, you could tell that this band has matured. I think it's a good opener since it does have like a lot of energy. The second song, Reason, still has that grungy sound. The riffs are like straight out of the 90s. On this song, they have that classic grunge style riff, those deep string bends, that muted guitar strings. This is a song that would appeal to the fan base, given that it does retain that grunge sound, but at the same time, it does have a melodic rock sound. Now, by the third song, All Our Pieces, they started to lose me a little because they incorporate some of those elements of like modern pop music with that clean production, and this one had more of like a roots rock sound, something like the band The Wallflowers. This was one of the songs that had more of the contemporary sound. Now, it wasn't that bad. It made me want more of that classic grunge sound, which is what I was expecting to get out of this album. Then there's the fourth song called Take. They brought back some of that classic sound, and I kind of wanted to get into the album again. I think it was the grungy guitar progression that made me like the song. It also had a very melodic chorus, and it's the kind of song that stays with you. I thought the lead guitar work and the guitar solo was very good. And it's the type of song that they took their 90s grunge sound and they mixed it with a more mature sound, but it worked better with this one. So now at this point, I'm at the middle of the album, and they have a song called Undone. It's interesting because they have like these clean guitar chords that are strummed in like a grungy style. Then they like pick a few notes from it. But I do like how they mix that more contemporary style, but they're still keeping that grungy sound because most of their fans are probably over 40 years old, and they're looking for that like 90s sound, and they do want to hear that like old sound that they remember. But I also like how they did some different stuff. So for example, there's some harmonies. They reminded me of like the Beatles. I'm thinking maybe a song like Strawberry Fields, like those types of sounds. Then there's a little bit of like classic rock, and I thought it was enjoyable. The production was also very good on this album. On this song especially, you do hear like the bass guitar very well, and the vocals are very crisp and clean. Called Rule Number One. This one was a little more laid back. I wouldn't really call it a ballad, but it's slower paced. They do some interesting things. It's mostly strung acoustic guitars, but I like how they incorporated a distorted guitar that's mixed a little lower. But this is a song kind of reminding me of like Coldplay, but maybe like their older period, when they were kind of more of like an alternative rock band. I like the song. It was different. For example, the guitar solo it was pretty cool, and they do some symphonic stuff with some orchestration. It was pretty cool and a nice change of pace. Then there's a song called A Conversation With. My first impression of this song is that it kind of reminded me of like that post-punk sound of the early 80s. Maybe it was the bass guitar intro that made me feel it was different. They're trying some new things here. So for example, they do some more like falsetto vocals. On this song, they're doing, some new stuff. They moved a little away from that 90s grunge sound and they brought in some more contemporary sounds. It still appealed to their fan base, but it wasn't a modern pop sound. And at this point of the album, there's only like 3 more songs left. So the next track is called Just Looking Around. And I think at this point in the album, they're kind of like moving towards more like modern sounds. So less of those grunge riffs and more like different stuff. Songs are still well crafted. They're melodic, but I thought the song was okay. It didn't really stand out for me. This is probably a song that appeals to someone who's more into modern pop music or maybe somebody who still listens to Coldplay, but it didn't really have that 90s grunge sound. The second to last song is called Back Again. This was an acoustic ballad, and it was okay. It does have some elements of the 90s sounds, but at this point in the album, they're doing some different things, and I think they put most of like the grungier stuff on the front half of the album, and then some more like modern stuff on the second half. But it was good. I like the lyrics. Now, one of the lines he sings, I could take you back again, but today is not tomorrow's news. So the songwriting was pretty cool. The lyrics cool, but that's all I can say about this. And there's one more song called Where Do I Go? This one was a little different. They're kind of doing some different stuff. They mix in some orchestral elements, those psychedelic sounds, like, again, those like late 60s Beatles songs. But at the same time, there's acoustic strumming and like a roots rock sound. This is another one that reminded me of like the Wallflowers. But at this point in the album, they kind of moved away from that grunge sound. And the song is a little more memorable. So the chorus is very repetitive. He sings like, singing like "Where do I go?" and then "Where do I go without your heart?" They kind of like repeat that line a lot, so that kind of makes the song stick in your head. So in conclusion, I thought it was an enjoyable album. I enjoyed the harder rockers and grungier stuff that was more towards the front half. But I think this is the type of album that would appeal to like a wider audience. It would probably attract some younger fans getting into this album, but I think they mainly wanted to appeal to that over 40 crowd, the one that remembers those songs like Shine and those other songs. And there are some stuff that's a little laid back, but they do have some variety on the album. I thought it's decent, so my score is going to be a 7 out of 10. It does have potential to get higher, so maybe after I've listened to it a lot, it might grow on me, but this was kind of like one of those album reviews that I kind of had to like put together quickly because I wanted to get it out, on this Monday. So that's all. Please remember, like, comment, subscribe, and all that. See you in the next one.